Everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time. This is Masechet Bava Kamma, and today we are on the 12th class in this Masechet. It's a very long Masechet. Today we are going to be reviewing Daf 77 through 83. Also, I'd love to wish everyone a Tu B'Shvat Sameach. Here in Israel, it's already Tu B'Shvat. And for everyone else in a few hours, it'll be Tu B'Shvat. So hoping that we just focus on growth and nature and positive things as opposed to less positive things. Okay, let us go. We are on Daf 77, and we are going to be talking about someone who stole an animal that is kilayim. Kilayim is a mixture of two animals, right? It had two different species as parents. So let's say they stole this animal and then they slaughtered it. Or they stole an animal that was what's called a treifa. Treifa means that it is, I guess we could call it terminally ill, meaning there's something wrong with the animal that it's going to die within. It's going to die within a year, and then they sold it. This person is liable for to pay 4 or 5 times. Okay, wait, so let's take a step back for a minute. The Gemara teaches that an animal needs to be able to be sold or slaughtered in order to be liable the 4 or 5 times. If one of them isn't valid, then neither is the other. Meaning, if the animal cannot be slaughtered, and that's going to be the thing that we're going to explain in a minute, then you will not be liable to pay 4 or 5 times. So as I said, if the animal was a treifa, right, this animal that's going to die, meaning it's not a kosher animal, you can't eat this animal. So if it was a treifa, its slaughtering, the shechita, is invalid because it's not a kosher animal. Therefore, maybe if it's sold, it also wouldn't be valid to make a person liable to pay 4 or 5 times. And this is a machloket, right? Whether you are liable or you aren't. Okay, so now let's go to kilayim. I mentioned this idea of kilayim. The verse says that you stole and slaughtered a sheep. This comes to exclude an animal that is kilayim, meaning an animal whose one parent is a sheep and the other parent is a goat. So that would not be, if you stole and sold this animal, you would not be liable to pay 4 or 5 times. Or no, the fact that it says sheep does include kilayim, even if it is not even if it's a mixed breed animal, right? It says if you steal an ox or a sheep, so the fact that it says that comes to include kilayim. But right, because it says right, an ox and sheep cannot be kilayim together, therefore comes to include kilayim. However, when we have a listing about sacrifices, it says a sheep and a goat, and this, when it talks about sacrifices, comes to exclude kilayim, meaning you cannot sacrifice an animal where one of the parents was a sheep and the other parent was a goat. Daf 78 teaches us that when it says this or this, so the word o, which is or, either can, right, sometimes it can come to include something and sometimes it can come to exclude, right? So when the verse has o, meaning or, twice, so then it's coming to exclude, which is our verse, which is the verse for the sacrifice. Okay, so again, as we said, for sacrifices, um, it is excluded, but if it's for theft, then it is included. Let's say a person said that they'll bring a certain sacrifice, an olah, which is a burnt offering, and then he separates an ox and he says, this is going to be for my sacrifice. And then it was stolen. So the question is, can the thief repay the what he stole with a sheep or a bird, because these are also liable to be brought as an olah sacrifice. Again, the person said he's going to bring a sacrifice. So maybe I can give him any animal that would be a possible option for a sacrifice. So the Gemara answers yes. That would be okay. Meaning, there are two ways to designate an animal for a sacrifice. You can either say, I pledge to bring this sacrifice. And then you, if you pledge to bring a sacrifice, if that animal is stolen, you need to replace it to bring the sacrifice. So here we see that the thief can replace it with a different animal as long as it is a liable, as long as it is a kosher sacrifice. Okay, Aliza actually just asked a very interesting question. If kilayim could be eaten. So the answer is, I think it cannot be eaten. You are not allowed to get any benefit from kilayim. So eating would be benefit, and therefore you could not get benefit from that animal. Excellent question. Okay, next Mishnah on Daf 78. After stealing an animal, a person said that they were going to sell the animal, but retained a small portion of it for himself. Or he became a partner with somebody else in this animal, or he slaughtered it, but he slaughtered it improperly. In all of these cases, you pay double, but you do not pay 4 or 5 times. So just to remind ourselves, when a person steals an item, they need to replace it plus pay back additional value that they stole. Sorry. So we call this kefel, right? Double. You pay back double the value. If it was an animal and you sold it or slaughtered it, you have to pay back 4 times the value if it was a sheep, or 5 times the value if it was an ox. Now, if the sale or the shechting, the slaughtering, was improper or not complete, so then you do not pay 4 or 5 times, and you only pay double. So that's what the Mishnah is teaching us, that in order to be liable for 4 or 5 times, it needs to be a complete sale or a valid slaughtering. If either one is either not complete or invalid, so then you are not liable to pay 4 or 5 times. So now the Gemara explains this. Let's say you retained some of the meat, or even if you retained some of the shearing, right? So again, because you didn't sell the whole animal, you're not liable for 4 or 5 times. Or, says the Gemara, no, you're only if you retained a part of the animal that's connected to the slaughtering, right? Meaning if you say, I'm selling you the whole animal, but I'm not selling you its lungs, right? So then that's not a complete sale because you're not selling the vital organs, basically, of this animal, and then you don't pay 4 or 5 times. Or maybe, right, if he retains the ownership of the leg, right, meaning the meat, so then you don't pay 4 or 5 times. Or maybe we're talking about retaining ownership of the horn, right? The horn isn't removed while the animal is alive. Therefore, you don't pay 4 or 5 times. But if you retain the value of the wool or retain the wool itself, ownership of the wool, maybe you would be liable to pay 4 or 5 times because this is removed while the animal is still alive. So you're not inhibiting its slaughtering. Therefore, even with a sale, it would be a complete sale. If he stole, let's say he stole a lame animal, right? An animal with 3 legs instead of 4, or a blind animal, or he stole it from 2 partners. So he is liable to pay 4 or 5 times. What if, right, one partner steals the animal from another partner, right? They both own this animal. One of them steals it for himself. So again, you are also liable, or maybe not, maybe you are not liable in that case, right? Or maybe the case is that it's one partner who stole and slaughtered the animal, either with or without his partner's knowledge, right? Maybe he's liable and maybe he isn't. Let's say a person sold the animal, but not the fetus inside it, right? Maybe they had a pregnant cow, and then he sold it, but not the fetus, right? Is he seen as retaining ownership of the animal because he didn't sell the fetus, or no? And here the discussion is the fetus seen as part of the cow itself? Right, so this is a machloket, and the Gemara ends with teku. We don't know the answer. Let's say he stole an animal, he cut off one of its legs, and then he sold it. So we see he didn't sell the full animal. So again, but on the other hand, that is the full animal that it only has 3 legs right now. Again, teku. Another case, let's say he stole the animal, then he gave it to somebody else, and then that person shechted it. Or the same thing, he gave it to somebody else, and then that person sold it. Or it was used as a gift, like to be given as a gift or as a loan. So you still pay 4 or 5 times. We're now on daf 79. And the Gemara says that generally we have a very famous concept. In Hebrew, the concept is ein shlichut lidvar aveira, which means literally there's no such thing as sending someone else to do a sin, right? So if I say, okay, Aliza, I want you to go and kill so-and-so, right? So chas v'shalom, right? So you can't say, oh, okay, I killed so-and-so, but it's not my fault. Tamara told me to do it, right? There's no such thing. If you go, right, if I say, go steal something for me, again, I'm not talking about if I threaten your life. I'm just saying I'm appointing you as my messenger. You, please, can you go rob that bank for me, right? There's no such thing, right? You have your own mind and you know what's right and wrong. And therefore you can't say, right, I'm just the messenger, right? There's no such thing. However, in this case, we just said that if you steal an animal and then you give it to somebody else and then they sell it, so then you are liable for 4 or 5 times. So here, the concept that we just said about shlichut doesn't apply because in general, I always need somebody else to buy it from me, right? Meaning, if I stole an animal and then I sold it, so you need to buy it from me in order to make me liable. So too here, the original thief is liable if that animal is sold or slaughtered, even after he gives it to somebody else. Okay, and if he sanctifies the animal, it's as if he sold it to God, and therefore he's also liable as well. Okay, let's go to the next Mishnah. The next Mishnah tells us a person stole an animal from some, hold on a minute. Okay, Alisa's very funny tonight. Okay. Okay. The next Mishnah is someone stole an animal from the owner's domain, right? You went into someone's house and you stole an animal, and then you sold it outside in the market. Or the opposite, you stole it from outside, right? It was walking down the block, you stole it, and then you sold it in the domain, in a different domain, or you did everything outside. You're liable for 4 or 5 times. It doesn't matter where these events took place. However, if you stole it from the owner's domain, but you're still standing in the owner's domain when you sold it, so that doesn't count because you never acquired the animal in the first place, right? It never became yours to steal it or to sell it. Let's say you drag the animal out and it died while still in the owner's domain, you're not liable because you never acquired it. And we'll see right now, the next line is, however, if you lifted the animal, right, and we've seen this before, that lifting an object is a kinyan, is a form of acquisition. And therefore, when you lift it, right, so you can't lift an ox, but if you lift a sheep, right, so then you've acquired it. And if it dies, even while it's still in the owner's domain, you are liable. If he gave it to a kohen, to a priest, to redeem his firstborn son with, or to someone he owns money to, if the animal died in the owner's domain, so then he's still exempt because he never did anything. But if it's outside, so then he is liable. Hold on. How does the owner prosecute to get the animal back from an unauthorized sale? Excellent. Meaning, if something is sold, right? Ilanit is asking, if something is sold on someone's property, he can literally just go and get it, meaning the person never had the right to sell it in the first place. And then the buyer has to now go to the thief to get his money back. But that's between the buyer and the thief. The owner of the animal can just literally go in and take it because it was not a valid sale. Okay, all of that was the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to explain. The Gemara is going to ask, does a shomer meaning a guard or a watchman, does a shomer have to acquire the animal when he's guarding it, right? So does he pull the animal? So the Mishnah says if he was pulling the animal, so that shows that the shomer needs to pull the animal in order to gain responsibility for that animal. So the Gemara says no. In the Mishnah, we're talking about the thief who took the animal from the shomer as opposed to from the owner's house. Right? We're not talking about the shomer himself. We're talking about the thief, and he's the one who's dragging the animal. The answer is yes, meaning that the Mishnah is speaking about the shomer, the guard, who is taking it, and it shows that you do need to acquire it by dragging it. Let's say, right, if you rent something, you can acquire, right? So we know about a sale, but what if you rent something? So the Gemara says you can acquire it with money, a document, or by doing a chazaka, right? Doing an act that shows that you have rights to this item. So that seems to be. So the question is, what is this item that you're renting? Is it a movable item? So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about land. If you borrow land, so these are the ways that you acquire, if you're renting land, this is the way you can acquire it. Again, as we said, the thief must acquire the animal in order to be liable, right? It's only considered theft if he steals the animal, right? If he doesn't acquire it, he didn't steal the animal, right? Only a thief who steals. So here, the Gemara makes a distinction. We have in the Torah a distinction between a thief and a robber. A thief is someone who, sneaks into your house, steals something, and runs away. A robber is someone who basically like mugs a person, right? Who goes up to them with a gun and says, right, give me your money or else. So the Gemara says that the thief, when he steals privately, he's liable to pay the 4 or 5 times. But a robber who does it publicly in front of the owner is not liable to pay 4 or 5 times. And here, the Gemara explains why. So it says that a robber equates the honor of God to the owner, meaning the robber is not afraid of the owner, right? He just walks right up to him, and he's not afraid of God because he's stealing. So therefore, that's one way that the crime happens. But a thief is more afraid of the owner, right? Because he hides from the owner. He doesn't want the owner to see that he's breaking into his house, but he doesn't care that God can see that he's breaking into the house. Therefore, we have a stricter punishment for the thief than for the robber, right? He doesn't think that God, right? He doesn't care about God, as opposed to the thief versus the robber. Okay, we said that for a sheep you pay 4, and for an ox you pay 5. So the question is why? So you pay 5 for an ox because you're causing it to miss work, right? The ox, don't forget, in the time of the Mishnah and the Gemara, the ox is the tractor, right? So you basically stole the person's tractor. So all the time that you took it away from the owner, now the owner can't do any work, and therefore he loses out, and you have to pay more. As opposed to the sheep just kind of hangs around. So you pay 4 as opposed to 5. Or you pay less for a sheep because you were already embarrassed by carrying the sheep, right? Apparently with a sheep, you just kind of lift it and put it over your back, which is very embarrassing. So you kind of paid with, or you already paid a little bit because you were embarrassed, as opposed to leading the ox. Okay, I see there's another question. Hold on. If someone comes into the property and picks up the pet, has he acquired the pet? That's a great question. I think there needs to be some sort of either understanding, meaning I don't think, like, if I go to my friend's house and I pick up the dog to pet it, it doesn't mean that I'm acquiring the dog. It generally, the acquisition is after there's already a discussion of, can you sell it to me? I think I want it. Okay, right? Sometimes there's an exchange of money, and then you lift it up, and then it becomes yours. I think just regularly walking around and picking things up doesn't necessarily acquire it. Of course, if you pick it up and you run away, so then that would seem to be that you stole it. And then maybe the answer would be yes. Again, right, we've spoken about the idea of yeush, right? Does the owner despair or not? Right, that also affects if you acquire it or not. So excellent question. Okay, next Mishnah. The next Mishnah is going to start us on a discussion about proper etiquette, or maybe ways in which we have a functioning good society. So the Mishnah tells us on Daf 79, you shouldn't raise sheep or goat in Israel because they ruin people's fields. But you can do this in Syria, which is like Syria. next to Israel, and in open areas, right, where there's grazing areas, where it's not property that is owned by other people, so then it is okay. You're not allowed to raise chickens in Jerusalem because of kodshim, because of sanctified food, because we're afraid that, right, chickens go around and peck at things, and they might peck in the garbage, and then they might take it and put some of that garbage or something that is impure and touch something that is sanctified and impure and make it impure, right? And priests cannot raise chickens anywhere in Israel, again, because priests are always eating things that are sanctified. You are not allowed to raise pigs anywhere, not in Israel and not outside of Israel. You cannot raise dogs unless they are tied up. The reason given here is that dogs can bark. Dogs do bark, but they could scare a pregnant woman and cause her to miscarry, which I think is very interesting. I'm not sure that there are any tests that show this, any studies, but it is interesting. Definitely fear can cause miscarriage, but this is, anyway, an interesting idea. And the last thing in the Mishnah is you can only trap pigeons that if you're far from a city, right? If you're close to a city, it might be owned by somebody else. Again, if you're raising pigeons, they fly around. You don't hold them on a leash. So if you want to trap a pigeon, you can do it far away from the city so that you know that you're not taking someone's private property. Okay, so now the Gemara explains. You can raise large animals, meaning a horse or a cow, in Israel, because again, these are used in, again, I said, the ox is like a plow. You need a tractor. You need these animals. Here's an interesting principle that the Gemara says. In Hebrew, the principle is lefi she'en gozrim al hatzibur ela im ken rov tzibur yicholim le'amod ba. What does that mean? That the rabbis do not make a decree for the people if the people cannot handle this decree, right? If no one is going to listen to you, so then don't make the decree. And I think it's an interesting concept of the sensitivity that rabbis need when they make halachic decisions, right? We need to make sure that people, when they get the halachic answer, that they're able to follow it. Again, we can't say, oh, keeping kosher is too hard for me, make it easier. There are things that are rules and laws, but if we're making a rabbinic decree, so then we have to be sensitive to society and what they can or cannot do. However, the Gemara says that you can keep these animals. Again, we said you shouldn't raise sheep or goats, but you can keep them with you within 30 days of a holiday or before a wedding, right? Why would they let you keep a sheep in your backyard before Pesach? Because your whole family is coming for Pesach and you need meat, right? There's no refrigerator, there's no freezer. You can't start stocking up 3 months in advance. You need to actually buy the sheep and keep it in your backyard. So you could do it within 30 days of the holiday or your simcha, but after the holiday, you can't keep it. However, a butcher, obviously, can keep it till market day. They can't have it, however, there for more than 30 days. Again, we're very concerned that the sheep or the goats are going to go into everyone's fields and eat their crops. So we have to be very sensitive on how we what we raise and how it affects other people. Daf 80 tells us that Rabban Gamliel said that they could keep sheep and goat in Israel as long as they were tied up in their house. Others disagreed. There are more families. There are more stories of Rabbi Ishmael's family in the Galil in the north of Israel were punished for raising goats because it seems that they ate the vegetation on the way to the forest. They would eat from other people's fields. So it seems that they were punished. Let's say a shepherd does tshuva and he repents. He doesn't have to sell all his sheep at once. He can sell them off one at a time, right? So if he realizes, oh no, I'm doing the wrong thing, right? He doesn't have to take a hit and sell them all. He can sell it slowly. So too, if one vowed to buy a house in Israel and to find a wife, and then he gets to Israel, he does not have to marry the first girl he sees. He does not have to buy the first house that he sees. You can wait until you find the right one. You also cannot raise small wild animal like deer or fox, or you can raise, right? Some say you can raise small dogs or cats or monkeys. It seems that these animals, also a weasel, it seems that they eat the mice in your house. So those are good. So you can have those animals. The rabbis extended this prohibition to Bavel as well, not only in Israel, right? It shows how they wanted to again create a positive society in Bavel as well. Rav Huna's wife Chova watched or didn't really watch the small animals in their house, and then Rav Ada bar Ava cursed her that her children wouldn't survive her, and unfortunately the curse came true and her children died. So we see that this is, I think we learn a lot of things from the story, one of which is don't curse other people, but the other one is that you need to, if you do have animals, right, those of you who have pets, right, know you have to be responsible for your animals. You can't just let them go around and do whatever you want. There's another story of Rav and Shmuel and Rav Asi. They're standing outside the Beit Midrash. They're arguing who should go in first, right? No, you go first. No, you go first, right? Each one is trying to give honor to the other. But while they're arguing, they saw a cat come and bite the hand, just bit off the hand of a child. So you see here that cats are dangerous. Those of you who live in Israel know we do have a cat problem here. And here he says you shouldn't raise cats, and cats are not good. Some say, well, it depends on the color of the cat. Maybe white cats are dangerous, but black cats are okay because they're the ones that eat the mice. So you can look on Daf 8 if you are or not a cat lover. Okay. All right, from here, we have a list of 10 decrees or takanot that Yehoshua instituted when they came into Israel to settle the land. Again, since we're talking about setting up a proper functioning society, so we're going to have a few lists here. So the first list are the rules or the laws that Yehoshua created in order to help what's called in Hebrew Yishuv Haaretz, right? The settling of the land of Israel. Don't forget, the Jewish people were slaves. Then they wandered in the desert for 40 years. No one has ever been a farmer or, they have been shepherds, but they haven't had private, they haven't had land that they own. So they have to learn how to live together. So Daf 81 lists the 10 decrees. Just a spoiler, if you count, there are actually 11. The Gemara is going to talk about that in a minute. So here are the decrees. Number 1, they said that your animal can graze in another person's forest. Again, I'm going to read. I'll I'll read all the decrees, and then the Gemara is going to go through each one and kind of narrow it down a little bit more. So even though they sound very general, the Gemara is going to narrow each one of these, laws down. Okay, so here, so again, one is your animals are allowed to graze in another person's forest. Okay, not a field, but a forest. Number two, you can gather wood from another person's field. We'll see what we're talking about. Three, you can gather wild vegetation, basically like weeds or grass from someone's field where things are growing, unless it's a field of fenugreek. We'll see why. Four, you can cut saplings from someone's tree, right, in order to graft it onto your tree or to grow your own tree, but except for an olive tree. Five, people from a city can draw water from a spring that is privately owned. So if you go to your backyard and all of a sudden water starts coming out of your yard, people from the city are allowed to come and use that water. Six, you can fish in the Kinneret, even though we're going to see that it's actually part of one of the tribe's lands, but you cannot put in permanent nets. Seven, you can defecate on the other side of a stone wall, meaning on private property. Eight, you can walk through someone's field on a known path till the crop in the field starts to grow, meaning after the second rain. Nine, you can walk on the side of the road, meaning on private property that's on the side of the road, when there are these hard protrusions coming out of the road. 10, if you get lost in a vineyard, you can cut down the branches to find your way out. And 11, even though they're only supposed to be 10, a met mitzvah, meaning if you find a body that nobody has claimed, a dead body, it acquires the land that it's on, and you can bury that person where it is, meaning you don't have to move it or buy the land or anything like that. Okay, now the Gemara is going to go through each one and explain each one. So that animals can graze in someone else's forest. This is only if you have small animals, meaning sheep or goats, and the forest has to be a large forest, right? But obviously, large animal in a small forest is not okay. We said you can gather wood from someone's field. That's only to take thorns, right? If you're helping someone by getting rid of by bad things in their field, you can take it. But if it's something that the person wants or needs, you can't just go into someone else's property and take it. You can take grass, but not from fenugreek, because apparently the grass is good for the fenugreek. It like creates like a bed for the fenugreek to grow. So then it is okay. We said taking a branch off, like a cutting off of someone else's tree. You can do that, but not of an olive tree. You have to leave a bit of it attached to the trunk. You can take off new branches, but not old ones that already have fruit coming from it. Okay, number 5 was taking water. Some say that you might have to pay for the water that you're taking, but the Gemara says no, you do not have to pay. You do not have to pay for the water that you took. You don't have to. You don't have to compensate them for it. Okay. Next, we have number 6 was the nets. You can't put permanent nets in the Kinneret because it's dangerous for the ships. They are going to be. They're going to be. The ships are going to get stuck on these nets, and therefore you can't put it there. And the Gemara tells us that the Kinneret, the sea, is in Naphtali's portion, and also the dry land around it as well. Okay. Trees. Again, Yoshua sees that they're coming into Israel, and he says trees that were detached when the Jews came into the land. So then all tribes are allowed to take that wood. But if the wood is attached, meaning if it's a tree, so then whatever land it's sitting on, it becomes that tribe's property, and then you can't go and take that wood from that tribe. Just another beautiful line, since we're talking about how each tribe had a property, right? Had land. The Gemara tells us that every tribe had every type of land of Israel, meaning in every nachala, in every tribe's inheritance, they had a mountainous region, a low region, a negev, also like an open area, and a valley. So it is interesting to think about, if you think about the topography of Israel, and people say this all the time, it's amazing. You drive 1 hour and you're in completely different climate, and also, right, geography, topography. So too, every tribe's area had all different types of land as well. Okay, we were talking about the stone wall. So what was the point of that? That you can take a rock from the wall to clean yourself. We said that you can walk on the paths. In Bavel, if the dew falls, so then it's problematic. Therefore, you can never walk through someone else's field. We talked about walking on the side of the road because of the hard protrusions in the middle. This is the case also in Bavel. And 10 was that you can cut the vine. You can cut the vine to get yourself out, and you can also cut the vine if you see your friend is stuck in the vineyard, so you can try and get him out. Let's say, then the last one was burying a person. If you have the option of an empty field or a plowed field, it's better to do it in the empty field. But this shows that you are moving the body. So the Gemara says, well, it depends. If the body was found in the middle of the street, you're not going to bury the body in the middle of the street, because every time someone walks through, on that street, they're going to become, or they may become, impure. Therefore, if it's in the middle of the street, you move them to the side into a field. Okay, the Gemara says, wait a minute, there are 11, and you said that there were 10. So number 8 was made actually by Shlomo, and not by Yehoshua. Then the Gemara says, wait a minute, only 10 or 11, there are really more decrees. You can put your manure in a public domain so that people walk on it for 30 days to make it better. Let's say a beekeeper sees that his bees went and built a hive on your tree. He can cut down the branch in order to return the bees to him, but he does have to pay for the value of that branch. Okay, next, Daf 82, we have 10 takanot of Ezra. Again, what is the time? Yoshua is the time of the Jewish people coming into Israel the first time. Ezra is the time of what's called Shivat Zion, the return of Zion. These are the people who return from Bavel after the 70 years of exile. Right? The Jewish people go into exile after the first temple is destroyed. They come back 70 years later. Ezra is the leader of these people. And again, he creates new takanot, new decrees. It's interesting to think about the nature of Yehoshua's takanot versus the nature of Ezra's. Let's do Ezra's. Number 1, this time there really are 10. Number 1, you should read the Torah on Shabbat afternoon at Mincha, which is what we do now. You should read the Torah on Monday and Thursday morning, which we do now. You should judge cases on Monday and Thursday morning, again, because that's when people are coming to the city. You should do your laundry on Thursday. You should eat garlic on Friday night. Women will explain each one of these. Women should wake up early and bake their bread. 7, women should wear a sinar. In modern Hebrew, sinar means an apron. He doesn't mean you should wear an apron so your clothes don't get dirty. Here he means undergarment or pants underneath your dress. 8, women should comb their hair before they go to the mikvah. 9 is that sellers of perfume and cosmetics are allowed to go from city to city to sell their wares. And 10 is a Baal Keri, a person who has a seminal mission, should go to the mikvah. Okay, let's explain each one. People couldn't go to shul on Monday and Thursday. Therefore, they needed to read the Torah reading on Shabbat, meaning not Shabbat day, but Shabbat afternoon, when we read the next week's Torah portion. Why do we read on Monday and Thursday as well? We know we read on Shabbat, but why do we have to read Monday and Thursday? So the Jewish people were in the desert, and it actually says, right, this week's Parsha, that they went for 3 days, there wasn't water, and the Torah says, right, there wasn't water. The Midrash says, what does it mean there wasn't water? Right, you can't go, just like there wasn't water for 3 days and they were thirsty, you shouldn't go 3 days without Torah, right? Torah is like water. You shouldn't go 3 days without Torah. Therefore, we read on Shabbos. So then you have Sunday, Monday. Then again, you have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then again, you have Friday, Shabbat. So this way, we are not going 3 days without reading the Torah. And we read 10 psukim when we read the Torah. Monday and Thursday are also court days, because that's when the people came to the city to hear the Torah. We do laundry on Thursday because we want it to be ready for Shabbat. Again, kavod Shabbat. You eat garlic on Friday night because it's good for marital relations. You should bake bread early in the morning so that if poor people come to your house, you have something to give them. You should wear the sinar because of modesty, right? Something underneath your clothing. You should comb your hair, is talking about getting rid of chatzitzot, meaning any sort of barrier that could be in your hair. And therefore you do that before you go to the mikvah. And the peddlers was that we want to make sure that women can be beautiful for their husbands, right? Perfume and makeup. So the peddlers are allowed to go from city to city. And the Baal Keri, a person with seminal mission, beforehand needed to go to the mikvah if they needed to eat sanctified food. But Ezra said, in order to learn Torah, you also need to go to the mikvah. Okay, since we're talking about 10 things, well, I just think it's interesting to think about, like, Yoshua was like setting up society. Ezra is about bringing them back, religious commitment. Yoshua is more about like agriculture and how to live in an agrarian society. So I thought that was interesting. 10 things about Jerusalem that you can read it. You can read it in Daf 82, but basically, Yerushalayim has a special sanctity, obviously. Therefore, it's treated differently. You're not allowed to do things that would make it dirty, right? So no garbage dumps, no burning fires. You are certain laws don't apply in Jerusalem because it is not owned by any one tribe. Therefore, it could never be an Ir Nidachat, which is a city of idol worshippers, because again, it's not owned by any one city, by any one tribe. You can't raise chickens in Jerusalem. We said that before. And you can't leave a corpse overnight in Jerusalem. Okay, back to our Mishnah. We said you're not allowed to raise pigs in general. And here we have the very famous story about the beginning of the destruction of the temple, where we have civil war in Jerusalem. There's a group of Jews inside Jerusalem, a group of Jews outside, and every day they would lower money down, and then they would bring up an animal so that they can sacrifice it in the temple. One man who knew Greek wisdom said to them, as long as you're giving them animals and as long as they're sacrifices, you're never going to win the war. So the next day they actually put a pig in the basket, and as it was being raised up, it put its like hooves or whatever, yeah, I guess, into the wall, and Jerusalem or the world like shook. And basically, right on that day, they decreed that you should never raise pigs. It was definitely, I don't think it's the beginning of the end, but it's definitely part of the end, and led to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Daf 83. Since we were talking about a man who knew Greek wisdom, the Gemara says, wait a minute, how can you know Greek wisdom? Aren't you not allowed to learn Greek? So the Gemara says, you are allowed to learn Greek, the language. You're not allowed to learn Greek wisdom. It seems that is problematic. We said that you can raise dogs if they're tied up. If you live on the border, you can untie them even at night. And with that, we finished the 7th chapter. I'll quickly do the first Mishnah of the next chapter. This is the chapter of HaChovel. We're going to be talking about causing injury to a person, right? If a person injures another person, they are liable to pay 5 things. We have seen this already. Usually when we get to the 80s, we are going to be learning fundamental concepts that we have seen in the beginning of the Masachet. So if you remember, there are 5 things that you need to pay. Nezek, which means damage. We figure that out based on the value of the person with, and then the value of the person without this injury, and you pay the difference. You have to pay tsa'ar, right? Pain. How much, this is interesting, how much money would a person accept to have this pain? That's how much you would have to, right? Not how much money you would pay to not have the pain. How much money would you accept to get this pain? So I would imagine that's a lot of money. Ripui, which is your doctor's bills. Shevet, which means your unemployment, right? So how much, and here it's not, if you're a doctor, you don't get a doctor's salary payment, because the Gemara says you're already getting all these other payments. So it's not like how much money you lost every day of work, but if you were a watchman sitting in, right, watching, or a guard, that's, I guess, what you would call minimum wage. So you get paid minimum wage for every day that you lost in work. And boshet, which means basically embarrassment. This depends on the person who was injured and who injured them, right? So if a person is very famous and has a lot of honor and they're injured by someone very lowly, that would be more embarrassing. Let's do a little bit of the Gemara. The Gemara talks, very famous. The verse says, an eye for an eye, right? Ayin tachat ayin. You might think that if someone pokes out a person's eye, they poke out his eye. We say, no, we don't do this. Just like and they compare it to an injury to an animal. Just like if you injure an animal, you have to pay. So too, if you injure a person, you have to pay. As we said, we pay for damage, and we don't say, let's say, not only that, but you can't say, you know what, just take my eye, right? I don't want to pay money. Just take my eye. No, you can't do that. Also, the Gemara says, wait a minute, right? Every eye is a different size. So let's say you have a small eye and I have a big eye. That's not fair. So the maybe, right, again, we need equal judgment for everybody. Therefore, value is what you pay and you don't pop anybody's eye out. Daf 84 says that if you are looking at value, again, we don't say, oh, you're more valuable, I'm less valuable. Rather, again, as we said, you look at objective value, and that is how much you pay. And with that, I think we will end for today. Wishing everyone a wonderful week, a Shabbat Shalom, and a Tu B'Shvat Sameach. I hope everyone, either hugs a tree or thinks about a tree today or tomorrow. Think about the beauty that is in this world. I think we all need to be focusing on positive things these days. So wishing everyone a wonderful week and Besorot Tovot.